Have you ever wondered if old Hollywood's glamorous facade hid darker truths? Welcome to part 2 of our countdown of Golden Age celebrities whose behavior was anything but golden. From powerful icons who manipulated studios to stars whose private lives brimmed with scandal, these personalities reveal that fame sometimes came with a shocking price tag. Get ready to explore 20 more actors whose reputations for corruption, cruelty, or chaos have kept tongues wagging for decades. 1. John Barrymore. John Barrymore, often called the Great Profile, was one of the most esteemed Shakespearean actors to grace both stage and screen. With a magnetic presence in films like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 1920 and Grand Hotel in 1932, he epitomized old Hollywood's sophistication. Critics revered his powerful voice and expressive face, and fans flocked to see him bring complex characters to life. Yet behind the scenes, Barrymore was notoriously self-destructive. He was a heavy drinker whose binges sometimes stretched for days. Famous anecdotes detail how he would show up on set, either late or not at all, leaving producers frantic. In some cases, his alcoholic blackouts led to slurred performances, forcing editors to cut around his incoherent dialogue. A few co-stars described him as charming in his sober moments, but insufferable and reckless after a few drinks. His friends worried that he would drain his considerable talents far too soon. If that wasn't enough, Barrymore's personal life was equally erratic. He married and divorced multiple times, often jumping into new relationships before the ink dried on his latest divorce papers. Hollywood insiders whispered that he manipulated younger women with his legendary status, promising them mentorship while indulging their appetites. Though never charged with any crime, many considered Barrymore's unpredictability and lack of responsibility a kind of personal corruption. By the time of his death in 1942, Barrymore had tarnished his own brilliance through the very vices he couldn't escape. 2. W.C. Fields. W.C. Fields was beloved for his comedic persona. A cynical, snarky curmudgeon with a sly grin and razor-sharp wit. Classics like It's a Gift in 1934 and My Little Chickadee in 1940 showcased his ability to make audiences roar with laughter. Beyond the camera, however, Fields lived up to his comedic crankiness in ways that left some colleagues branding him downright cruel. His legendary love affair with alcohol is the stuff of Hollywood lore. Fields would reportedly hide whiskey bottles around film sets, inside prop drawers, under floorboards, even behind curtains. Directors often struggled to keep his inebriation from derailing production schedules. Worse, when drunk, he could be verbally abusive. Extras and junior crew members bore the brunt of his nasty remarks, as he believed little in basic politeness. Some recounted how he'd berate stagehands for the slightest oversight. Fields was also rumored to be highly manipulative in financial matters. Despite enormous success, he was notoriously stingy, rarely tipping waiters or bellhops, and sometimes trying to dodge personal expenses by getting studios to foot random bills. Co-workers found it exhausting to deal with his constant wheedling for freebies. While W.C. Fields remains a comedic legend, the behind-the-scenes stories expose a man whose appetites, both for booze and control, translated into real-life nastiness. Audiences saw a funny misanthrope on screen, but those who encountered him off-camera discovered an unpredictable tyrant fueled by liquor and self-serving demands. 3. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was the epitome of brazen charm. Known for her husky voice, quick wit, and flamboyant personality, she wowed Broadway and Hollywood in films like Lifeboat in 1944. Yet her outrageous behavior off-screen cemented her reputation as one of the wildest stars of her time. one who delighted in pushing boundaries and shattering taboos. Stories of her hard-partying lifestyle abound. She boasted openly of her sexual escapades, ignoring the era's moral constraints. Bankhead hosted lavish gatherings full of unbridled drinking, scandalous games, and rumor had it, sometimes drug use. She would scandalize more prudish guests by appearing nude or half-dressed, claiming she was just setting a free spirit loose. While not inherently a crime, her disregard for convention was so extreme that certain producers shied away from hiring her, fearing unmanageable chaos. Even friends found her temper unpredictable. One day, she'd shower companions with generosity, handing out expensive gifts and throwing decadent parties, only to explode in fury if she felt slighted. Staff who worked for her often quit after enduring her volcanic mood swings. She could verbally eviscerate maids and assistants for trivial mistakes. Despite these antics, Tallulah Bankhead's sheer magnetic force and comedic timing still earned her fans and supporters. But behind the glamorous image lay a self-centered showboat who left a trail of exasperated colleagues. Her story exemplifies how charisma and scandal can merge, creating an unforgettable yet deeply problematic legend. Fourth, Barbara Payton. Barbara Payton's beauty briefly lit up 1950s Hollywood. With roles in films like Bride of the Gorilla in 1951, she seemed poised for mainstream success. However, her off-screen life quickly descended into a storm of scandal that overshadowed any cinematic accomplishments. Payton became notorious for a high-profile affair with actor Franchot Tone, while simultaneously dating the tempestuous Tom Neal. The toxic love triangle culminated in a brutal fight in which Neal beat Tone so severely he landed in the hospital with a broken cheekbone and concussion. This shocking event turned Payton into a tabloid sensation, painting her as a femme fatale who brought out the worst in men. But Payton's problems went deeper than messy relationships. Allegedly battling alcohol and substance abuse, she gained a reputation for showing up late to shoots, if she showed up at all. Producers began to label her unreliable, and studios hesitated to cast her. Money troubles and an escalating drinking problem drove her further into disrepute. Some whispered that she got involved in sex work for quick cash, though details remain murky. Ultimately, Barbara Payton's personal life overshadowed her talent. She spiraled into poverty, and her final years were marked by desperation, multiple arrests for public drunkenness, and attempts to stay afloat by any means. Her tale stands as a cautionary story about how destructive choices and a penchant for drama can derail a star's career and life before it ever truly blossoms. Fifth, Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy's image in Hollywood was that of the everyman, an actor with natural delivery, respected for powerhouse performances in films like Captain's Courageous in 1937 and Boys Town in 1938. He won multiple Academy Awards and was widely regarded as one of the greatest screen actors of his generation. But behind this revered public face lay a complicated personal life, marked by heavy drinking, volatile moods, and an extramarital affair that spanned decades. Tracy was notorious for his struggles with alcoholism. Colleagues often found him moody and unpredictable after a few drinks. Some recounted how the usually polite Tracy could become combative, yelling at those around him, storming off set, or refusing to continue filming. Directors, mindful of his star power, often tiptoed around these outbursts to keep production on schedule. His long-term affair with Katharine Hepburn was Hollywood's worst-kept secret. Though married to Louise Treadwell Tracy for life, he refused to divorce her, reportedly due to religious convictions, but lived a double existence that vexed friends. Some saw it as a hypocritical stance, combining moral posturing with ongoing betrayal. Others felt empathy, given Tracy's battles with guilt and depression. In the end, few outside his inner circle would label him corrupt in a criminal sense, but his personal demons could manifest in jerk-like behavior. The chasm between his public persona as a gentle father figure and his privately self-destructive tendencies underscores how old Hollywood icons could lead deeply contradictory lives. 6. John Wayne. John Wayne, known affectionately as the Duke, remains one of the most iconic Western heroes in cinematic history. Starring in classics like Stagecoach in 1939 and The Searchers in 1956, he personified rugged American masculinity. Yet Wayne's off-screen stances and remarks have sparked debates and accusations of bigotry, leading many to see him as a problematic figure in retrospect. In a now infamous 1971 interview with Playboy, Wayne made inflammatory comments supporting white supremacy, downplaying the suffering of Native Americans and questioning the intelligence of African Americans. The resulting backlash tarnished his wholesome cowboy image. Some interpreted Wayne's beliefs as a reflection of systemic racism in mid-century America, especially potent coming from a movie star whose roles shaped cultural ideals. Moreover, Wayne had a role in the Hollywood Red Scare era. He served as president of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, a group that supported blacklisting suspected communists. Although not directly naming individuals, Wayne's strong anti-communist rhetoric contributed to an environment of fear and professional ruin for many. While Wayne's iconic film roles still enjoy devoted fans, critics argue that his personal views reveal a much darker side of his legacy. Whether one admires his westerns or condemns his politics, it's hard to ignore how the mythic cowboy hero displayed real-life convictions deemed hateful or oppressive by modern standards. In that sense, John Wayne's reputation is far more complicated than his hero persona on the silver. 7th, Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby's warm baritone voice and easygoing style earned him the title of America's crooner. Beloved for songs like White Christmas and roles in films such as Going My Way in 1944, Crosby seemed like the epitome of wholesome charm. Yet his private life, particularly his alleged treatment of his children, painted a starkly different picture. Gary Crosby, Bing's eldest son, wrote a memoir detailing harsh physical and emotional abuse from his father. He described beatings that went beyond typical discipline and recounted a household governed by fear. Bing supposedly insisted on strict rules and enforced them with a belt or cane, leaving the young Gary traumatized. While some of Bing's other children disputed Gary's account, the revelations damaged the star's paternal image. Aside from family matters, Crosby was known for being extremely frugal, sometimes verging on stingy. Industry insiders noted how he negotiated contracts obsessively, always aiming to maximize profits for himself. Understandable in show business, but some felt he crossed into greed. He could also be detached or cold with co-workers, uninterested in forging genuine relationships. Even if the full truth of Bing Crosby's parenting style remains debated, Gary's accusations stain the legacy of a star whose voice once symbolized comfort and cheer. What emerges is a portrait of a complex man whose private behavior jarred sharply with the genial persona that enthralled millions of fans worldwide. 8th, Gloria Grahame. Gloria Grahame was the quintessential film noir femme fatale, starring in A Lonely Place in 1950 and winning an Oscar for The Bad and the Beautiful in 1955-1952. With her distinctive pout and sultry persona, she captivated audiences and stirred controversy that rivaled any dark plotline she portrayed on screen. The most notorious scandal involved her marriage to director Nicholas Ray. which ended when Ray allegedly caught her in bed with his then-teenage son. Whether the rumor is fully accurate remains subject to debate, but Grahame did eventually marry that stepson, Anthony Ray, some years later. The tabloids exploded over the suggestion of incest, painting Grahame as an immoral seductress who'd gone too far. Colleagues noted other bizarre behaviors. Grahame was said to be obsessed with plastic surgery, once requesting procedures to alter the shape of her upper lip. She had difficulty bonding with co-stars who found her both vain and fragile. Publicly, she presented an image of breezy confidence, but privately, she could be moody, evasive, and manipulative, especially when it came to romantic entanglements. Though Grahame's talent shone brightly on screen, her personal life overshadowed her career, causing professional setbacks. Major studios distanced themselves, wary of the sensational headlines. Today, Gloria Grahame stands as an emblem of how easily real-life controversy can overshadow even the most remarkable on-screen performances. Her story remains one of old Hollywood's most jaw-dropping cautionary tales. Nounti Lex Barker. Lex Barker found fame as the chiseled Tarzan in the late 1940s and early 1950s, stepping into the role vacated by Johnny Weissmuller. Blonde, handsome, and athletic, Barker looked the part of a jungle hero. However, revelations from Lana Turner's daughter, Cheryl Crane, cast a dark and chilling shadow on his off-screen life. Cheryl Crane accused Barker, her stepfather at the time, of repeatedly molesting her when she was still a minor. The allegations, detailed in Crane's autobiography, described horrifying instances of sexual abuse that lasted until she summoned the courage to tell her mother. Turner reportedly confronted Barker and threw him out, though charges were never filed. The scandal became a whispered Hollywood secret, overshadowing any heroics Barker displayed on screen. Professionally, his career never quite recovered. While he found some work in European films, American studios largely distanced themselves. Friends claimed he denied all accusations, but the rumors persisted, and many believed Cheryl Crane's account. Public sentiment soured, with fans seeing the on-screen Tarzan as a predatory figure in real life. The Lex Barker case illustrates an especially disturbing brand of corruption, the alleged abuse of a child by someone entrusted with her care. It remains one of the more appalling stories from an era when studios often hushed up sexual scandals involving big names. Whether or not official charges were made, Barker's reputation was irrevocably stained by accusations that revealed a monstrous betrayal of familial trust. 10th, Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa Gabor was famous less for her acting abilities, though she appeared in films like Moulin Rouge in 1952, and more for her jet-set lifestyle, extravagant glamour, and a seemingly endless string of marriages. She cultivated an image of a flirtatious socialite, dripping in diamonds and witty one-liners. Yet, beneath the glitter lay a trail of controversies that branded her as the quintessential Hollywood diva. One of the most infamous incidents occurred in 1989, when Gabor slapped a Beverly Hills police officer during a routine traffic stop, leading to a sensational trial. She defended herself with flamboyant outrage, claiming the officer had been rude. Regardless, she was found guilty of assault. The episode showcased Gabor's hot temper and sense of entitlement, traits that colleagues and staff members often bemoaned. Zsa Zsa was also dogged by allegations of financial impropriety and gold-digging. Critics accused her of marrying wealthy men primarily for their fortunes. She once quipped, "I never hated a man enough to give his diamonds back." She and her sisters, Eva and Magda, formed a trio of scandal-prone socialites who fueled tabloids with their spats, love affairs, and lavish spending. Despite, or perhaps because of, her high-profile antics, Gabor managed to remain a beloved guilty pleasure for Hollywood gossip fans. She exemplified a particular brand of celebrity corruption, where arrogance, entitlement, and a refusal to follow ordinary rules defined her public persona as much as her comedic charm. 11. Bette Davis. Bette Davis, star of All About Eve in 1950 and Jezebel in 1938, was hailed as one of the greatest actresses of her time, renowned for her piercing eyes and fearless portrayals. She racked up Academy Award nominations, proving her talent was undisputed. Off-screen, however, Davis was notoriously difficult to work with, cementing her reputation as a Hollywood bad girl, who clashed with nearly everyone. Producers and directors often dreaded her fiery temper and uncompromising demands. She battled with Warner Brothers for creative freedom, but her fights weren't just about artistic integrity. On set, she could be abrasively critical of co-stars, directors, and crew. Rumors swirled about her quickness to insult or belittle those who didn't meet her standards. Several projects ended abruptly, or required recasting because Davis refused to continue under certain directors. Her feud with actress Joan Crawford became legendary. Both strong-willed, they slung vicious barbs at each other in public and private. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? In 1962, tensions ran so high that physical altercations were rumored. While fans relished the stories of rivalry, many who worked with Davis saw a talented but tyrannical figure who could be merciless when crossed. Though not corrupt in a legal sense, Davis's willingness to sabotage colleagues or hold productions hostage to her demands revealed a domineering streak that overshadowed many working relationships. Even as she maintained her image as a fiercely independent woman, critics argue she wielded power in ways that could be deemed a form of professional bullying. 12. Lana Turner. Lana Turner's discovery story is the stuff of Hollywood legend. Spotted sipping a soda at a malt shop, she became a glamorous star of films like The Postman Always Rings Twice in 1946 and Payton Place in 1957. Dubbed the Sweater Girl, Turner radiated sultry appeal on screen. Yet her private life was riddled with scandal, much of which revolved around her tumultuous relationships. Turner married 8 times, repeatedly diving headlong into stormy affairs. Her most infamous entanglement was with gangster Johnny Stompanato, a known associate of mobster Mickey Cohen. Their relationship ended violently in 1958 when Turner's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbed Stompanato to death during a domestic dispute. Cheryl claimed she was protecting her mother from abuse. The resulting trial was a tabloid sensation, painting Turner as a femme fatale entangled with dangerous men. But even before that tragedy, Turner was notorious for her fiery temperament. Some co-workers described her as mercurial, 1 minute gracious, the next throwing tantrums if her demands weren't met. Directors sometimes struggled to keep her on schedule. She occasionally arrived late to set, citing personal drama or emotional duress. Although never charged with wrongdoing, Lana Turner's life played out like a Hollywood noir script. Her high-profile romances, connection to violent men, and overshadowing tragedies made her a perpetual figure of controversy. For fans, she remains a symbol of old Hollywood glamour. For critics, an emblem of the chaos that often lurked just beneath the Tinseltown veneer. 13. Erich von Stroheim. Austrian-born Erich von Stroheim arrived in Hollywood proclaiming himself a former aristocrat and decorated military officer, nicknaming himself the man you love to hate for his villainous silent film roles. He also directed epic productions such as Foolish Wives in 1922 and Greed in 1924, earning a reputation for extravagance and near-insane perfectionism. However, many in the industry found him insufferably arrogant and manipulative. Von Stroheim's directorial methods bordered on tyrannical. He demanded obsessive detail, insisting on authentic locations, costumes, and props that ballooned budgets. On the set of Greed, he famously shot over 85 hours of footage, a staggering amount for the silent era, bankrupting his studio. Crew members whispered that he reveled in creating chaos, sometimes forcing actors into grueling conditions for realism. He'd hurl insults at staff and threaten to quit if he didn't get his way. His constant feuds with producers, especially Irving Thalberg at MGM, became legendary. Von Stroheim's refusal to compromise often led studios to seize control of his films, drastically cutting them against his wishes. He responded with public tirades, painting himself as a misunderstood genius while belittling the intelligence of studio heads. Though undeniably talented, von Stroheim's colossal ego and dictatorial methods undermined his career. His mania for authenticity and his abrasive behavior got him labeled as one of Hollywood's earliest auteurs, but also one of its most toxic figures. The clash between his artistic ambition and contempt for studio boundaries left a legacy of brilliance stained by perpetual conflict. 14th, Paul Kelly. Paul Kelly was a character actor in Hollywood from the silent era through the 1950s, appearing in films like Flying Tigers in 1942 and The High and the Mighty in 1954. He managed a steady career, but his off-screen life carried a sensational chapter. Kelly served prison time for killing another man in a brawl. In 1927, he got into a fight with actor Ray Raymond over Ray's wife, Dorothy McKay. Ray sustained severe injuries and died shortly afterward. Kelly was charged with manslaughter, served about 2 years in San Quentin, and resumed his acting career upon release. The scandal shocked Hollywood, but the studios, in a move that now seems chillingly familiar, largely protected him once he was out of prison. Even after serving time, Kelly's personal life remained tangled. He later married Dorothy McKay, the widow of the man he had killed. This bizarre turn fueled public outrage, with many seeing it as the ultimate betrayal. Yet Kelly continued landing roles, indicating how Hollywood's appetite for a good actor sometimes trumped moral reservations. Though not as infamous as some other scandals, Paul Kelly's story reveals the extent of Tinseltown's willingness to rehabilitate or overlook serious crimes if it served the industry's interests. He might not have been the biggest star, but his case stands as a stark reminder that the studio's power and the public's short memory often paved the way for second acts, even for a convicted killer. Pitnasty Gig Young. Gig Young, born Byron Barr, rose to prominence as a debonair supporting actor, eventually winning an Oscar for They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, in 1969. Known for his smooth voice and urbane charm, Young seemed to have the Hollywood dream life. However, behind the genteel facade lay deep-seated demons that culminated in a horrendous crime. Young struggled with severe alcoholism, erratic behavior, and a string of failed marriages. Colleagues noticed he was frequently unreliable on set, prone to mood swings, and often had to be nursed through scenes. Despite these red flags, Hollywood's thirst for stars with elegance and wit kept him employed. Over time, however, his personal instability overshadowed his talent. In a shocking finale to his life, Young murdered his fifth wife, Kim Schmidt, shortly after their 1978 marriage, then turned the gun on himself. The motive remains unclear. Some speculate about mental breakdown, others about simmering marital tensions, but the result was a tragic murder-suicide that left Hollywood in stunned disbelief. Gig Young's story is a grim testament to how old Hollywood's glossy surface could mask dangerous turmoil. Even as he racked up accolades, he spiraled into an abyss of addiction and violence. In the end, his chilling final act replaced the memory of a polished performer with that of a deeply troubled individual whose private torment led to devastating results. 16th, Al Jolson. Al Jolson, famed for pioneering musical films like The Jazz Singer in 1927, was often touted as the world's greatest entertainer. He was undeniably groundbreaking, popularizing sound pictures and electrifying audiences with his dynamic stage presence. But modern scrutiny has labeled aspects of his career deeply problematic, especially his frequent use of blackface in performances, which at the time was accepted by mainstream vaudeville, but is now recognized as racist and demeaning. Jolson's defenders claim he supported black artists by bringing jazz and blues elements into mainstream show business, even helping some black performers get breaks in the industry. However, his repeated blackface routines and minstrel show stylings perpetuated harmful stereotypes. His popularity arguably normalized a form of entertainment that mocked African American culture for white amusement. Offstage, Jolson was rumored to be self-obsessed and controlling. He demanded top billing and constantly tried to overshadow co-stars. Some co-workers described him as vain, always angling for the spotlight. He feuded with producers over contract terms, used strong-arm tactics to secure bigger paychecks, and reportedly showed little concern for collaborators' creative input. For many, his arrogance was as glaring as his stage makeup. While revered as a trailblazer in early sound cinema, Al Jolson's legacy is undeniably tarnished by racial insensitivity and an oversized ego. He remains a complex figure who symbolized both the advancement of popular music and the exploitation of offensive imagery, a testament to old Hollywood's capacity to elevate major talents, even when their methods were morally fraught. 17. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting with his raw, naturalistic performances in A Streetcar Named Desire in 1951 and On the Waterfront in 1954. He carried an aura of rebellious intensity that made him a cultural icon. Yet Brando's personal life was as tumultuous as any of his iconic roles, rife with allegations of abusive behavior, explosive tempers, and a disregard for boundaries. He was famously difficult on sets, clashing with directors, rewriting scripts, or refusing to follow cues. During the making of Mutiny on the Bounty in 1962, his constant demands for script changes and filming delays reportedly ballooned the budget. Studio executives found him insufferable, lamenting that no matter how talented, he was hardly worth the headache. Brando's private sphere was equally chaotic. He fathered numerous children with different women, creating a complex family web often embroiled in controversies. Allegations of domestic violence emerged from some of his relationships, although details remain partially obscured by Brando's fame and privacy. The swirling rumors painted him as a man who both championed social justice causes, like civil rights and Native American issues, while struggling to keep his own house in order. In many ways, Marlon Brando embodied the contradiction of a charismatic genius plagued by self-indulgence and an inability to treat others with consistent respect. Like many old Hollywood stars, his personal failings stood in stark contrast to his artistic brilliance, underscoring the notion that revolutionary talent can sometimes be accompanied by deeply troubling behavior. 18. Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly danced into Hollywood history with classics like Singin' in the Rain in 1952 and An American in Paris in 1951. He was celebrated for combining athleticism, grace, and charm, creating some of cinema's most memorable musical numbers. Behind the scenes, though, Kelly had a reputation as a taskmaster whose quest for perfection often crossed into cruelty. As both performer and choreographer, Kelly demanded exacting precision from his dance partners and ensemble. Debbie Reynolds famously recounted the grueling experience of learning complex routines under his strict supervision. She claimed that her feet bled from exhaustive practice sessions and that Kelly offered little sympathy. Co-stars described him as short-tempered, hurling verbal jabs if anyone fell short of his lofty standards. Kelly's controlling nature extended beyond dance steps. On multiple film projects, he clashed with directors over creative decisions, refusing to compromise. Some producers found him insufferable, complaining that he imposed his vision without regard for budgetary or time constraints. If challenged, Kelly could become icy or explosive, generating tension that reverberated across entire crews. No one denies Gene Kelly's monumental contributions to the American musical film genre. Yet his brilliance came with a stubborn streak that many labeled abusive. While not embroiled in scandal of a criminal nature, Kelly's intimidating style and harsh discipline left emotional scars on collaborators. It highlights how a legendary performer's drive for artistic excellence can morph into tyrannical behavior in the pressure cooker world of Hollywood filmmaking. 19th, Orson Welles. Orson Welles redefined cinema at just 25 years old with Citizen Kane in 1941, hailed by some as the greatest film ever made. He continued breaking ground with inventive camera techniques and storytelling. Yet Welles's genius also arrived with an enormous ego and a disregard for Hollywood's financial bottom lines that many studios found intolerable. Welles had a notorious habit of promising sweeping visions for his projects, only to go wildly over budget. Films like The Magnificent Ambersons in 1942 and Touch of Evil in 1958 were famously recut by studios after Welles either abandoned them or proved impossible to collaborate with. He would storm off sets, vanish from meetings, or relocate to Europe mid-production, leaving executives fuming and co-workers scrambling. His arrogance extended to personal interactions. Actors admired his creativity, but found him manipulative. Some claimed he'd lavish praise on them one moment, then demean them the next to assert dominance. Welles's sense of self-importance also caused friction in the press. He gave interviews declaring that Hollywood was beneath him artistically, even as he kept returning to it for funding. Though not corrupt in the sense of illegal activity, Orson Welles's unyielding ego, refusal to follow studio constraints, and habit of discarding collaborators earned him a reputation as a Hollywood pariah. Critics see him as a tragic figure, a cinematic prodigy whose brilliance was undermined by hubris. His career exemplifies how unbridled creativity can clash violently with the industry's realities, leading to a legacy of half-finished dreams and acrimonious departures. 20th, Judy Garland. A final entry that merits careful discussion is Judy Garland. Universally adored for her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz in 1939, she also dazzled in A Star is Born in 1954. However, her off-screen narrative was riddled with personal demons, battles with drug addiction, emotional breakdowns, and tumultuous relationships. She was deeply victimized by the studio system that controlled her diet, forced pills on her to manage weight and energy, and exploited her from childhood. So why include her here among the bad characters? In truth, Garland wasn't so much corrupt as she was locked in a cycle of self-destruction that occasionally led to erratic, hurtful behavior. She could be mercurial and lash out at close associates, and she struggled financially, defaulting on debts and sometimes reneging on performance contracts. While it's a far cry from the calculating malice of some on this list, her repeated downward spirals had real consequences for those around her. Some fans argue Garland was more a tragic victim than a jerk, but From a purely factual standpoint, her substance-fueled unpredictability and sometimes abrasive manner caused pain. Concert promoters and film producers lost large sums when she canceled shows or arrived incapacitated. Loved ones tried to help, but often bore the brunt of her outbursts. Garland's story underscores how the damage of old Hollywood's exploitative environment could manifest in harmful behavior, even if her heartbreak overshadowed any deliberate corruption. And there you have it, 20 more Hollywood legends whose glitz came with a shockingly dark edge. From monstrous egos to tragic descents, their stories remind us that the same magic that enthralls us on screen can hide complex, painful realities. In the end, old Hollywood's shimmering glow can't mask the lasting effects of corruption, cruelty, and broken souls. Perhaps it's this duality, fame and folly, that keeps us forever fascinated by Tinseltown's golden era.